Na, grüß Gott, hallo, schönen guten Tag. Ich bin Billy Berger und das ist Bausteine 1. Hier nehmen wir jede Woche einen neuen Baustein der deutschen Sprache unter die Lupe. Doch das Ende des Semesters naht, also müssen wir diese Woche etwas anderes machen. Herzlich willkommen. So you're thinking to yourself, but it's the last week of semester. Surely you can't want to do something new in the last week. Well, I do and I don't. Let's see if I can explain what I mean. At the beginning of our course, we introduced, of course, the idea of cases. And their job, as we know, is to give us a little bit of an idea of what the function is of every noun, or for that matter, pronoun, in a sentence. And they do this by subtly changing the article that goes with the noun or the adjective that describes the noun. And of course, also by changing the pronoun. And we do this in English, of course, too, since we say he and him, she and her, they and them. And this helps us to understand if nouns or pronouns are meant to be the subjects or the objects. And if you're not sure what I mean by this, we've got other videos about this up here somewhere. In this course, we really just concentrate on subjects and direct objects, so the nominative and the accusative. But I want to show you we actually have kind of snuck in the dative there too. There have been plenty of examples where we have used the dative without us maybe even noticing. So today I want to look at some of them and also give you kind of a gentle introduction to a couple of new ways that we can use the dative without doing our heads in. In the first week I asked you a couple of questions like, for example, wie heißen Sie or wo wohnen Sie and was studieren Sie? For this last question you started off by saying ich studiere Deutsch. But then we added in the little bit, ich studiere Deutsch an der Universität von Tasmanien, to get across the idea of where you are studying German, at the University of Tasmania. And of course, if you're studying somewhere else, you can add in the name of your university there as well. But the thing that we probably didn't notice at the time is that we are saying an der Universität. And if we look up Universität in the dictionary, like for example in Leo, then we actually see that it's die Universität, since unis are feminine. And suddenly our word for the, ich studiere an der Uni, is der and not die. Now that's kind of odd, isn't it? Kind of random. But let's look at another example. A couple of weeks later, we introduced our time phrases, all those different ways of talking about when stuff happens. And you'll remember that we used am Wochenende for talking about at the weekend. And at first glance, it looks like there isn't even a word for the in our German phrase. It's just am Wochenende. But am is really a contraction. It's short for an dem. So our phrase am Wochenende means an dem Wochenende, at the weekend. But again, if we look up Wochenende, we see that it is das Wochenende, the weekend. And yet we're saying an dem Wochenende. And more or less the same thing is happening when we talk about days and months. And this might set you off thinking about the seasons. Remember we talked about what we do in winter and in summer. Well, in German the seasons are masculine, just like the months of the year as well, where we do the same thing. So we talk about im Winter and im Sommer. Well, maybe you can guess what is happening here. What we're really saying is in dem Winter and in dem Sommer, even though it says der Winter and der Sommer in the dictionary. And there must be some reason why this happens, mustn't there? Like some pattern to it. So if we look at what's happening here in these examples, we see that we are using different articles for feminine, neuter and masculine nouns in certain situations. We seem to be using der for feminine things, an der Uni, dem for neuter things, an dem Wochenende, and also dem for masculine things, in dem Winter. So there really only are two articles as long as we're talking about singular things. The dative has got lots of jobs, and we're not going to talk about all of them here. What we're talking about in this situation is actually location. With an der Uni, we're describing where you study, an der Uni, at the university. But look, this is meant to be a gentle introduction to the dative, not a full-on assault. It's not important for now to know everything about the dative, not at this stage. But look, if you're desperate to know, I've got another video up here. But for now, I just want to ask you to think about some of the other phrases that we've used to see if you can at least recognize whether the dative is being used, even if it's for slightly different reasons. It's going to be the first thing, or one of the first things, that we look at in more detail in Bausteine 2 next semester. So I'm going to finish up today by giving you two really quick new examples of where we can use the dative. Two prepositions actually, since certain prepositions are always used with the dative. Now the first one we're going to look at is mit. This means with. And we can use this pretty much like we do in English for talking about who we do things with, but also for how we get around. For example, ich fahre oft mit dem Bus. After mit, we always need the dative, and since the bus, der Bus, is masculine, we'll say dem Bus and not der Bus. If you live with your sister, same deal. Ich wohne mit meiner Schwester. That ER ending is just like the der that we use when talking about studying at the university. My second example and last example is seit. And this is used in time phrases and is the equivalent of since or for in English, and it's often used for referring to durations or starting points. For example, ich lerne seit einem Monat Deutsch. I've been learning German for a month. Here we see the EM ending because month is masculine. Take another example. Ich lerne seit einer Stunde. I've been studying for an hour. And here we have the ER ending, which is the one that we used when we were using feminine nouns in the dative. So if you come across a strange ER ending when something is feminine, or EM ending when something is not, in other words masculine or neuter, then there's a good chance that this is going to be the dative. And if you want more information on the dative, then check out our other video on this up here. All I want to do today is to show you that we've met the dative before, and really that it's everywhere if you start looking. It's even in phrases like wie geht's dir? Yep, a dative pronoun. Also das war's dann für heute und auch für diese Woche. Ich wünsche Ihnen eine schöne Woche und wenn Sie Fragen haben, melden Sie sich einfach. Ich würde mich freuen. Also alles Gute, auf Wiedersehen und tschüss.